Still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good morning. Welcome along to NUFC Matters. A very early start. Thank you for everybody tuning in. It just shows you we've got people watching all over the world. You never know where people are, what they're up to. But thank you for tuning into NUFC Matters. And I hadn't done a Q&A myself this week. I deliberately kept it for the day with us being on an outing today. So here we are, 8 o'clock, probably do it till about 8:45. So I'll try and get through as many of your questions as possible. And no real news today. Lots of fake news circulating, and I did want to start with that. The amount of stuff that I get sent on social media by friends and viewers of the show and stuff we get emailed, is it's understandable, because the way that a lot of this stuff is generated and created, using the various tools available on the internet, it does look believable. But don't always believe what you see, is what I'm going to say, because ultimately, there's something circulating this morning, for instance, which says that we are, just about to sign Sesko, and it's not true. It rather stupidly links David Ornstein's name to it, and a simple check on David Ornstein's social media shows that that is being created by somebody trying to create some mischief. So it's a bizarre situation. It really, really is. And it's one of those things that you can't prevent. The internet is there, and it does create things, and people create things just to create mischief, and that's it. What I can tell you is, obviously, Eddie Howe has spoken again, another press conference. He's basically admitted that there has been another bid, and that essentially, from his perspective, people in England are the ones dealing with it. And he said that when they get back to England, he will do his best to get Alexander Isak through this, and he wants to see him in a Newcastle United shirt again. He says, I know where he is now through the media. I was made aware of that bid yesterday. The bid was turned down before I even heard about it. I really don't know what happens next. We still support Alex in every way, and my wish is that we see him in a Newcastle United shirt again. So Eddie, obviously, is very good at man management, player management. He then says, in terms of trying to upset players, from my perspective, we can only talk about us. We try to do things the right way. Signing players is always complex. We just try to do what we think is right. I can't talk about other clubs. That is not for me to say. And again, Eddie Howe, just really, playing with a straight bat, always somebody who, you get an honest answer from at the press conference. And horrendous position for him. How on earth can you plan for a new season, a Champions League season, when you don't even know who's going to play up front. On Sesko, he says, I'm not dealing with it. We'll try to bring the best to the football club, but I can't talk about individual targets. It's been a challenging summer. We've missed out on lots of different targets for different reasons. We're still very competitive. We're still in there trying to bring good players to the club, and that won't change until the window shuts. So Eddie really being forced to the front by the club to give answers on, on the day-to-day running of the club. Do I agree with that? You know what? I don't. I think Eddie should be concentrating on getting his team ready for the start of the Premier League season and the start of the Champions League campaign. And he's been forced into this position. Lee Marshall is obviously head of PR and media, but let's face it, he only does what his bosses tell him to do. He will have a remit to follow. There's just a distinct lack of leadership at the club, and that is so disappointing at this moment in time. We do need somebody to take the bull by the horns and come out and speak on behalf of Newcastle United. I don't know why there hasn't been some kind of media appointment. Somebody, could be put into that position. Under Kevin Keegan, we had Graham Courtney in that position. Gary Oliver wasn't afraid to come out and say what he had to say when he was press officer. Take a bit of responsibility. Everybody, just take a little bit of pressure off Eddie Howe. That's all I'm saying. I think that's what needs to be done. Anyway, let me get to your questions. Stephen Kennedy, good morning, mate. I'll get back to your inboxes on social media later, but I will be in a bit of a rush when I leave the show. Steve, should the club play hardball with Isak if we don't get what we want for him on our terms? If he refuses to return to the fold, should we say you train with the under-18s and don't play for 3 years, then go to Liverpool if they still want you, or go to Saudi for a year and leave for Liverpool next season, having played and still be in match condition? I really can't see the scenario where if he stays, we get the best out of him. If we're soft on him, it'll send the wrong message to those future players who get their heads turned. If he stays, they're going to be a portion of the crowd turn on him, and it seems like he's not trying, like the start and end of last season. It's going to make for a bad match day atmosphere. Stephen, listen, I've had a lot of questions like this from people, and I don't have the answer, unfortunately. I can only give my opinion, but what I will say is, my opinion hasn't really changed from last night. I almost feel it's impossible that Alexander Isak plays for Newcastle again. And I think Newcastle should be planning for life without Alexander Isak, because he's clearly had his head turned. And the reaction of, some supporters by putting, vandalising stuff, putting banners up, whatever they've done, is something which will stay with him. He won't be immune to that. He won't not have seen that. He will see the day-to-day coverage. His agents will see the day-to-day coverage. And, ultimately, I just that bond between the supporters, and the bond between the supporters and the player is so important. It'll always be in the back of Newcastle United fans' minds. I just find it very difficult for, me to accept that he will play for Newcastle again. And, you're right to point out the way that he was at the start of last season, at the end of last season. You're very right to point that out, Stephen, because there was a distinct lack of interest. Anybody who I came across last season, friends or people you just bump into at the match, I said on numerous occasions, he's not committed. He's not 100% committed. And this situation wasn't a big surprise to me. It's still disappointing, as it's disappointing to everybody. But I genuinely felt at some moments in the season last season he wasn't as committed to the project as others. So I find it very difficult that the end result says Alexander Isak stays. I really do. It's going to take some pretty honest talking from him when he comes out and explains the situation, if he is going to stay. Good morning, Gary. I hope you're well. He says, I thought Howe, when being questioned about Isak's whereabouts, said, I know where he is now through the media. Does it say he's definitely gone AWOL? Gary, you take everything that Eddie says, with a pinch of salt, and there is always a subliminal message in there from Eddie. That's the way I read it. Doesn't mean that's the situation. I don't know, but he clearly knows, less than maybe as a manager should know on this particular occasion. So I would say, yes, he probably did go and train with Sociedad without anyone's knowledge. Gaz, Sesko, here we go. Hopefully this time, guys. That's the kind of thing I was talking about earlier. There's no confirmation from anybody that Newcastle have made a bid for Sesko at all. There is a fake news picture circulating in the internet. One of our fans forum sent me it this morning, and it's very easy to be taken in by stuff like that. But there is no official confirmation of a move for Sesko on any social media platform with any journalist at the moment. So and Gary V, you're right not to get your hopes up. And Gaza said it broke last night from his hometown, if true. Nothing. The one I've seen is got David Ornstein's name attached to it. So I very much doubt that that has happened, to be honest. Morning, John. Hope you're coping all right with this transfer window. From my perspective, it's just a strange one. I thought we would go out and spend in excess of £200 million on players this year, this summer, and that we wouldn't have any problem attracting players because of our qualification into the Champions League and the fact that we won a trophy last year. But how wrong could I be? I'm happy with Ramsdale and I'm happy with Elanga, and there is a long way to go. Of course, we're still a month away from the close of the transfer window, so I guess it doesn't all need to be doom and gloom yet. And by the time 2nd of September comes in, then we could all be sitting with a big smile on our face. But let's wait and see. Steve, of all the journalists that report on the club, who is your go-to or most trusted? Craig Hope is still my most trusted journalist, Gary. I've known Craig, well, I've known all the journalists on the North East beat for well over 30 years. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've been having a big sort out. Because I've commented in the media for many years about Newcastle United, I've always kept everything, more or less as a record to refer to go back on. If for instance, somebody claims that I've said something about former manager, I can go back to that particular era and go, well, this is what I said. So it's... Some people might think it's it's a bit strange keeping everything, but I just think it's being prepared and making sure that you can cross reference. You can hold your hands up and say, well, yeah, I did think Ruud Gullit was going to be a good manager. How wrong was that? I did think Sam Allardyce would bring something different to the football club. How wrong was that? I did think Mike Ashley was going to be a good owner at Newcastle United. How wrong was that? And I'm sure some of you out there would probably, go, yeah, well, I was the same, Steve. But through that period, I got to know a lot of the journalists, and I've had some great relationships with journalists over the years. They obviously like me because I was always keen to give my viewpoint on Newcastle United, and I could give it in a measured way, I guess. Without expletives, which is always beneficial if you're doing TV and radio. But I got to know quite a few of them, and I think the saddest thing for me is that the takeover of Newcastle United changed my relationships with quite a few of them. Not because of my attitude, but because of their attitude towards Saudi ownership. And I respect their decisions. I respect their opinions. What I didn't respect was the way that some people dealt with, their social media interaction with me and others on that, and it whipped up a frenzy. And I don't need to recap really in depth on who and why and what, but unfortunately it became, two camps, the pro-Saudi and the anti-Saudi. And you just need to go back to 2021 or 2020 and 2021 and look on social media and the interactions some of these people had with supporters, and it's soured those relationships forever, which is really, really sad. But if it comes to trust for someone getting a story, for me it is still Craig Hope, and I do like Craig's YouTube channel as well, and I still don't think that journalists should have their cake and eat it. I don't think that there should be covering the club for their paper and also having a YouTube channel. But that's just my opinion. But I do enjoy watching Craig's stuff. It's the only other podcast or Newcastle United podcast that I watch, because I do know that Craig's contacts are good and he gets good information. So if you want to go to, then he is the person to go to. The rest of them, I think he leaves them in their wake. What you've got to understand with journalists is they all have contacts, but they all have different contacts. So let's just say, without saying, too much, some journalist will be indebted to Eddie Howe's camp and will be getting information from them. Some will be getting information from somebody who deals with the media. Somebody will be getting information from a player. So you're always going to get 3 slightly different versions, because not everybody is in the loop about what is going on. I think to a lesser extent, there will be people who have a contact within PIF, but I'd be very surprised if there's anybody leaking anything out of PIF. But there will be people who do it. The other side, of course, is agents, and that's when you do get more of a warped side of things and a more biased side of things. And this will be what is happening with the Alexander Isak situation. But it's such a hard job for the local journalists. I mean, Lee Ryder, I've spoken about Lee on here for many years, and Lee's a good lad. He's, he gets a lot of abuse and, stick, but Lee's in an impossible job. He's in the job that Gibbo had and Alan Oliver had. He's the person who has to do 3 pages of news on the Chronicle's website and in the Chronicle hard copy, each day, even if he's not getting anything. So his job is more difficult than everybody else's, I think. But Lee's a good lad, and take a bow, Lee, because the interview you got with Anthony Gordon was superb. And what an honest, frank interview that was. For me, that was the best thing about this week at Newcastle United. Anthony Gordon telling us exactly where he was at last summer, where his head was at. He couldn't do it last year, of course he couldn't. But to come out and be honest about it, I thought that was great. And let's hope he has a great season, because we're going to need it. Let's hope he has an injury-free season and doesn't get a daft red card, But look, from my point of view, Craig Hope. Long-winded answer, but Craig Hope. So Isak is staying, Sesko is coming, and Wizzer is whizzed off. I'd love to see Wizzer at the club, Craig. Really, really would. You know what? I don't like the fact he's gone on strike, because you could always do that at Newcastle if he comes here, but he's clearly committed to Newcastle United's cause, would love to come here. Clearly isn't driven by the money. He'd probably be on an increased wage to what he is at Brentford, you would imagine. But the fact he wants to come here, he's got a desire to be here. Wissa and Alanga, we just need a good centre forward and a good backup. Sesko would be fantastic. I'd still take Dominic Calvert-Lewin as the number 2. I know some of you wouldn't, but if we could get Sesko and another, which is what we need, I would be happy. I really would be. And we do have alternatives. You do have Wissa, who could play up front as well in that position. I dare say if Newcastle got Wissa and Sesko, they would say that was the front 2, and that you've got others who can fit in if there's an injury or whatever. But you've got a Sula as well, of course. But yeah, interesting. Hells, good morning. Morning, all you lovely freaks. No sleep needed on the weekend. Of course not. No, it's my fault, unfortunately. Trolls, good morning. Liverpool fans thought they could get Isak on the cheap. Well, I told them we've got owners that are some of the toughest negotiators in the world. Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? And morning, Roger. When do you think Liverpool will return with a second bid? I think they've got to sell. Núñez, and then they'll come back. I still think that this will drag on. Some people feel it'll get done next week, but my feelings are that this could drag on a little bit longer. I think he's going to have to come back into the camp and train. But like I said last night, there's two endings to this for me, and one of them isn't him staying at the club. I think there's 2 endings. I think he either puts a transfer request in next week and doesn't turn up for training, or and he has to wait for the second bid, or Liverpool come back and win the bid next week and he goes. But I don't know the full ins and outs of Liverpool's financial situation, but you do have this feeling that potentially, they may have to sell Núñez if they're going to come in with a bid that Newcastle deem reasonable. It's got to be 150 million plus. But it will be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure Liverpool will come back in, though. Some Slovenian journalists have been saying it's done, which is interesting. If they were reporting fake news, then they would have used Man United's name for clicks, surely. Yeah, Dom, I've seen this. Again, this is another one I got yesterday. That the deal's been done. And I'm getting this from Scousers, who I know. And the deal hasn't been done. It's quite clear it hasn't been done. People are saying it's been done, but they're not announcing it because Newcastle have said they want to be able to get their forward in first. That's not going to happen. It doesn't happen that. It doesn't happen. I'm very certain that doesn't happen. And they wouldn't be playing all this out in the media like this. It's not fair on the player. Never mind the supporters. So yeah, I think that's rubbish, Dom. Yeah, honestly, it's very rarely that I'll say something as something as black and white as that. But I think that's rubbish. I really do. Yeah, Lawrence, I covered that at the start of the program. It's not happening at the moment. There's nothing official, so I wouldn't get too carried away with that. Which young striker do you think we should go for? Do you think DCL is looking more attractive idea? John, I've said DCL is attractive from the start, as in it's an attractive option for Newcastle to sign as a secondary striker to replace Callum Wilson. DCL is definitely somebody I would bring in, but it needs to be as a supporting role to an A-lister, so that's what we need. Not Nicholas Jackson, thank you very much. Not Núñez, thank you very much. Sesko, it has to be the main focus now, a lot of people saying, oh well, with Ekitike, wasting money, blah. I would like to have had Ekitike, but it just wasn't meant to be. This transfer window is playing right into the media's hands. It's a shitstorm for fans, but it's playing into the hands of the media, and the media are lapping it up. They love it. Clicks, 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 and it's ka-ching for them. And we've just got to, I guess we keep saying we've just got to stay calm, but it's just so difficult. We all have our moments where we can't help it. Do you know what I mean? It's just frustrating, these windows. It really is. But we've got a month left. So Eddie saying that he wanted players in early has probably had us all in a bit of a mild state of panic, but we've got a month left to get this all sorted out. So that's it, really. Question for Steve: do you think Liverpool's statement saying they will not bid again is true, or just another tactic? Hell, it's a tactic. They will bid. They will bid again, and when they bid, it needs to be in excess of 150. If they come back in with 130 or whatever, I don't think Newcastle will go for that. I really, really don't. And I would imagine, and people are saying who's running the club at the minute, who is making the decisions, who's negotiating. I'll be very surprised if it's not the owner himself. It won't be Peter Silverstone. It can't be Darren Eales. People are saying that Darren Eales is still working at the club. Darren Eales is still a very ill man. And his contract was up at the end of June. If they've asked him to stay on, then it hasn't been confirmed that, and he's by all intents and purposes is still not well and is still visiting hospitals. So for me, I'll be very surprised. Roger, not heard about another bid. Nothing on Sky at the moment. I do have that on in the background. And Trolls, yeah, that Sesko story is not great. It really is open season on NUFC. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's one of those situations where Newcastle do bring the clicks, and that's the way it is. There is no second bid at the moment. Just double checking. The only breaking news on Sky is that Son is set to leave Spurs after 10 years. MLS looks the most likely destination for him. Craig says, I got bored with the Isak talk weeks ago. Always fancied Liverpool were trying it on to unsettle him and have put a transfer request. I see 120 million as an insult. He'll not go for that. He'll not go for that at all. If he goes for that, then it'll be crazy. That's just ruined my day, Steve. Sorry, Gaz. Sorry, mate. Tesco meal deal. We're getting a centre back and a centre midfielder too. Is it Van Heckel is the latest one to be linked with Newcastle this week? We had I had a message last night from somebody, one of the lads who I used to play football with, sent us the link, and it comes from down the Brighton newspaper, and he's not going to sign a new contract. Van Heckel, the centre half, so he has been linked with Newcastle, which is interesting. Will be around about £40 million for him. So I guess that's one to watch. Be interesting to see whether anything happens with that. Love the fact that we turned Liverpool down. Just love it. Yeah, I think we all are. Tell, good morning. I'm convinced Liverpool will come in with an acceptable offer. If they don't like all of our players, I will get behind Isak. His head turned, but someone will have to lay the load down. Yeah, look, if he has to stay, I still think that's the least likely end of this story. But if he has to stay, there's going to have to be some kind of media announcement from him. There's going to have to be some kind of, commitment to the cause. At the start of this process, I expected Newcastle to come out and say, "There's some extra money for 12 months. You can go next year, depending on who comes in for you." But at the moment, I still can't see him staying at the club. I really can't. I think it's an impossible situation. Thank you to Alan for reposting the stream. Nice to see that. We're getting a notification about this now. So thank you, Alan, for doing that. And thanks for watching. If you are watching on X, by the way, jump onto YouTube, search NUFC Matters. Just hit the subscribe button. It is free. And we do 7 shows a week. Something's a bit early like this. When did Howe say he wanted to be transfer chief? He didn't say it, Stephen. It's one of those things. If you say it enough times, it becomes true. It's something that's been painted as a picture by some people, and people saying that Andy Howe and Nixon and him wanted this way, and this is the way they want it. It's a strange scenario, Stephen. But yeah, people sometimes think if they say something enough times, it becomes true. Craig says he'd get rid of Isak, loan him to Liverpool for 50 million if they can't afford the fee. 50 million loan, sell him for 110 million next year. I don't think that's going to be the situation, Craig. I think it'll be a cash upfront deal that Newcastle will be wanting. And that's why I don't think he'll go to Saudi. It's an impossible situation. Giving him to Saudi, I don't think we score well with PRS, PSR. I think it becomes a bit of a nightmare, that, so I think Newcastle will sell him. If we're going to sell him, it'll have to beat the Liverpool, which will kill us, I think, to start with. We've got a great team. The only thing is we lack squad depth, says Clinton. Yes, Clinton, you're right. Well, it is the one thing that we lack, squad depth. Hopefully we will be able to have a bigger squad come the end of this transfer window, which I keep reminding people it does finish in a month's time. Graham, good morning. Sell well, buy smart. PIF have plenty of clout. The big issue is who is driving the bus. It's got to be the owner. It has to be our chairman. I think that's why he was back after the Live Golf up here to sort it all out. I think that's who's driving the bus at the moment. Steve, we've got a catch-22 situation. We can release Isak if we have no replacement, but if he stays, the rest of the team will be truly miffed if he doesn't give 100%. Yeah, and I mean, I think we've had some honesty from the dressing room. Anthony Gordon has said yesterday that, it's affected the squad. So, obviously there's a friendship there. Jacob Murphy and him are best pals. But this kind of situation is going to affect those in the dressing room. So yeah, it is a catch-22 situation. Marcus, good morning. Obviously a horrible situation. Do you see something bigger in this picture? Not really. It's very simple. I think he's had his head turned, and I think that he's not being given what he was promised at Newcastle United, and that is why he's had his head turned. It's as simple as that, really. Everybody knows that Newcastle are hampered because of the rules, and they also know that due to the lack of commercial revenue put into the club over 14 years of Ashley's reign, that they can't pay the big wages. So those players who go to other clubs when they've been linked with Newcastle are not going for football. They are going for money, and for me, that's good riddance to them. The likes of Wissa, who clearly wants to come to Newcastle because he wants to play Champions League football, yeah, but he's not chasing the pound note. He's not chasing the pound note. And from his perspective, you know, he wants to come and play for Newcastle. Try and get him. Break the bank. Offer 40 million. I get it, Newcastle. I think, oh, I don't want to spend that much, but you know, if he wants to come, he's the kind of player you want, isn't it? That's the big picture for me. What are your thoughts on the need for a midfielder now? Has that priority changed after Willock's injury? Well, he's not injured. He's not badly injured. I would sell Willock, and I'd replace him. I would have gone for Gallagher. Conor Gallagher seems Newcastle ready. You know what I mean? But Willock is still fit. And the thing is with Willock, you know, in certain competitions, he looked better than, you know, he looked all right, you know, in certain games last season. But Premier League, he seems to struggle. Keep him for the cups, keep him for the cup games, keep him for the Champions League. But Willock's not badly injured by all accounts. I've not seen any reports to say that he's badly injured. It was breaking overnight in Slovenia, Steve, that Sesko has chosen us. Main headline in the article in Slovenia, Sesko will be the new Alan Shearer, says James. Interesting. Just as credible as the source that revealed he wanted Man U and everyone ran with it, says Gavin. Yeah, but this is the point. We can't get carried away with stuff in the media. Do you want Isak to leave for a big fee, Steve, given the way he's gone on? Yes, I would be happy for him to leave. I don't think there's a way back. Blue Rhythm Boy, I don't see how he can pull on that black and white shirt again and come out onto the pitch. And there would need to be, it's not an apology, but it's an explanation. It's taken Anthony Gordon 12 months to explain what happened with him. Isak hasn't got 12 months. I think the fans have been hurt by this. I'm the same as you, Steve. Can't see him playing for us again. He has played this very poorly. He should have got on the plane to South Korea. All this could have been played out behind closed doors. 100%, Gary. Not going to South Korea, not going on that trip is been the big thing. And the fact that he's gone and trained at Sociedad and Eddie Howe, reading between the lines, didn't know where he was. It's just not very professional. What dream has Alanga been sold? Thought him coming would aid Isak. Thoughts on where he wants to be in his career for another 2 years at least. Ben, I agree. I thought Alanga came because of the likes of Isak selling the dream to him and telling him how good it was. Clearly not. I genuinely feel that Alanga is he has enjoyed what he's seen at Newcastle and has just chosen Newcastle because he can see that it's beneficial. He clearly has a better relationship with the Sula. So I think that's it. I think the dream he's been sold is very simple. You know, it's a chance to better himself at a club which at this moment in time is bigger than the club he left. I just think, you know, I did think that it was all down to, you know, his relationship with Isak. He could play a big part in maybe turning things around as well. You know, I'm sure he will have been on the phone to Isak at some point. I trust Craig Hope, says Mark. So do I. Steve C, good morning. Surely we set the bar at 140 million. Old school, but I'd stop his wages, report him PFA for breach of contract if he refuses to play. Harsh. I wouldn't say it's harsh at all, but I mean that's further down the line, isn't it? That's further down the line, Steve. At the moment, let's see what happens on Monday when the team meet up again. Let's see if he's back at training. All Sky's cameras and the media's cameras will be at the training ground, ready to see it. I hope they've scrubbed off that vandalism that was up there before he turns up. I'm sure you'll have seen it anyway. But and I think he's worth 150 million plus. 150 million plus Harvey Elliott would be canny, Steve. I'd take Harvey Elliott 100%. 4 weeks till the window closes. I'm not hopeful. Thankfully, Ashley prepped me for rubbish windows. This is a breeze. Well, Craig, you're right. At least we've brought 2 players in. Are you buying the Sesko reports this morning? At the moment, Steve, no, I'm not. But I hope it's true. But at the moment, no, I'm not. Nobody's reporting it apart from Slovenian newspapers, according to everybody in the chat. Our transfer team is crap. They use a lot of time getting a no and low ball every answer. Every transfer we make not good enough, and Scholler should be sacked for sending Cordero at the Belgian league. Is Scholler even in charge of that now? I don't know. He's had his face on a pint of Guinness. But other than that, I think he's an ambassador for the club. I don't even know if he's still doing the loans. There's never been an official announcement to say he isn't, of course. Keegan's statue. The main Respect newspaper in his home country has said he's decided on Newcastle. I read the article from the chief right now. Okay, well, we'll wait and see what happens with that. When Amanda and Co were in, they were good go-between for the club and fans. There's nothing like that anymore. Yeah, and that's the point, Ben. It's why there's been, talk of Amanda potentially coming back. There's nothing substantial about that. It's just a rumour circulating, but we need somebody in that position. It's what I was saying at the top of the programme. If they're reporting it to Slovenia, there has to be some truth in it. The team have probably briefed them. Interesting, James. Maybe. Steve, how worried are you that it seems we'll go into a hard start of the season with Gordon, Alanga, or Rasula leading the line? Well, I'm not worried at the moment. But it's, it's the games that we've got, isn't it? Aston Villa, Liverpool, Leeds, three tough games. Eddie will have found a way. Eddie will have found a way to do it. It's the kind of problem you have during the season, isn't it? When you have no striker, you've got to play somebody makeshift. I read nothing into friendly results. We could lose all of these friendlies and then go and beat Aston Villa in the first game of the season. So I'm not worried at the moment, mate. If I'm perfectly honest, I'm more worried about how the transfer window pans out. James says, question as well for you, Steve. What's your opinions on transfer windows? Would you scrap them entirely, get rid of the January one, or have an extended summer window? Yeah, I'd get rid of them entirely. It's a media-driven exercise. Like I say, from the days of Harry Redknapp pulling up at the training ground, looking out the window and giving an interview, it's become a thing. I'd get rid of them and let people wheel deal all through the season. I think it would probably change things for the better. Trolls doesn't trust journalists. If true and Sesko's want to join us, then we offer Brentford what they're wanting at around 35 million per Wissa. Everyone's mood around the window changes. Yeah, this is the problem with windows, Gavin. It does change. It can change. And from our perspective, Newcastle United's perspective, two more players, a big centre forward and a centre half comes in, and Newcastle's had a successful window. So I guess waiting for that month is key, really. Gordon, 99% of journalists are just scribes. They write and report what they're told. Very little, if any, investigative journalism or truth. Maybe the date is true, but that's it. Well, I tested that theory years ago, Craig. I put something out in the very early days of Twitter, and within 12 hours, that thing that I'd put out was being reported as a story in a local paper. It does, they don't do what journalists used to do, which is have, search around for a good story. Sometimes they're just lazy and pick it off the internet. Not everybody, but some do, Craig Hope has been clear that the club are working hard to get deals done, including Sesko. It's not for the want of trying, which is what Eddie's reiterated this morning. And James says, I reckon they're working overtime to Leipzig and back. They probably borrowed a few pigeons from our transfer team with how slow we seem to be going. Les, good morning. When you see modern day reporting, it's Max and Gibbo saying just because you have a story, it doesn't mean you have to print it. Yeah, I mean, there's some classic stories from back in the day when they made mistakes, journalists, and still ran with the story. What was that one again? The Brazilian who was going to come to Newcastle. It turned out it was a student band, and I think it was Alan Oliver who'd overheard it in a bar. Steve, do you not think the major problem are players who think money first, who are not the type to come to us? These missed big names are not missed at all. Yeah, that was the point I was making before. I'm probably slightly behind with the chat, to be honest. Is the Isak saga a distraction? The squad is thin. We need at least 4 or 5 quality signings. The kitty is decent. Another 150 million to it, and it could all end well. Yeah, I agree, mate. I do think it could end better than we are at the minute anyway. We must have offered Sesko an absolute fortune. Apparently, we've massively bumped up the personal terms. Again, it's all from this Slovenian outlet, which is important. Important if it's true. There's a famous story from the Mark Crossley about Cloughey's despise of agents. Do you believe that Cloughey had unbelievable vision, Steve? Of course he did. Of course he did. He was one of the gems. The greatest man never to be an England manager, Cloughey. I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of times as a youngster. He was very good friends with my granddad, Brian Clough. My granddad was a referee, and they had a good relationship. My granddad was also the headmaster of a local school, because he had 2 jobs at the time, referee and linesman. And yeah, Cloughie came along and did a presentation for him at a school, and I was lucky enough to be there. I also went to watch Gateshead play Nottingham Forest, and was taken into the dressing room to meet the lads. So yeah, Cloughie, lovely bloke. I think signing 2 forwards out the current transfer budget and selling Isak once we have that cover will put us in a great place regarding PSR for the coming seasons. Only positive I can see. Would you take Nunes plus cash? Nah, Benny, Nunes isn't the answer for us, I don't think. I really don't think he's the answer for us. I want cash off Liverpool. Cash in a Harvey Elliott would 150 million and Harvey Elliott. That's what I'd settle for. Close doesn't want to sell to Liverpool. We've scouted Sesko for years. I didn't realise that either. You know, it's a name that's really just come onto the horizon for me over the last few months. Steve One for Mitch reports at PIF and FSG doing business at a higher level to move that Isak Matter on, apparently reported by Graham Bailey. As soon as anyone mentions Graham Bailey, mate, he's one of those journalists I was speaking about at the start of the programme, mate. I take everything he says with, a skipful of salt, not a pinch. Ask that question on Sunday when Mitch is on. He'd probably give you more of an answer to that. Sorry, mate. I'd be so disappointed if we accept a penny less than 150 million. Yeah, me too. Stuart, good morning. Morning. Isak leaving probably be last week of the window after we play Liverpool at home. I still think he'll go, and I think it could drag on. Yeah. Liverpool have been told we can't accept a bid until we sign the replacement, which is probably what Yasser has told him. I wouldn't be surprised. Dean says the club need to show strength here, otherwise every player's agent will be lining up to get more money or even jump ship. This is the time to show who the new Newcastle are. Isak can train with the kids. Saw one report that Sesko had chosen us. Yeah, this is the Slovenian thing, I presume. And let's move down a little bit further. Trevor, good morning. This is not new. Supermac used Gordon Lee to engineer his move to Arsenal. Okay, mate. I wasn't around in those days, so I couldn't say yes or no on that. Ornstein reporting last night that apparently this week we offered Isak a pay rise and also a release clause in his contract for next summer, and he still said no, he wants off. Yeah, I saw that. Do you think we can ever deal with Liverpool again after this? There'll always be a time, I guess, when we have to. It depends how culpable they are, really. All right, okay, cheers, Roger. A tactic from Liverpool so that Isak stays away from training so they can nick him for less, says Benny. Yeah, there's definitely a bit of sportsmanship going on here. Stephen, you've got no idea how big the top English football league can be. EPL will be gone in a few years if they don't fix this. Yes, talk of a Super League resurfaced again last night, didn't it? And unless we get a quality striker in, we can't sell Isak because DCL and quality doesn't score. No, he needs to be a secondary striker. Isak won't ask for a transfer because that would jeopardise his loyalty payment if he does leave, says Alan. Yeah, it's a good point. And if Isak is still here for the Liverpool game and we get a pen, would he take it? Oh, God almighty. Doing a shopper against Newcastle. What happened with the Scalvin deal? He looked ideal to me. My understanding of that was, a bit of further investigation into his recovery from his previous injury. I don't think I don't understand this, but you need to speak to a physio or a doctor. But I think it put a few of the clubs off, and I think that's where it all died a deal. I think that's the centre half you're talking about, John Scalvini. When do NUFC pivot and try to sign a right centre back? We've got 2 agent centre backs. Legs could go at any time. Yeah, the one that's been linked is I've seen a link from the Brighton newspaper I mentioned at the start of the programme. Van Heckel has been linked with Newcastle. He would be 40 million. Wouldn't be a bad signing in. To be honest, from Brighton. With hindsight, does it show that Isak was always the odd one out within the spirit of the team as a whole? Yeah, I would say possibly. He didn't look committed at times. It's just a strange scenario. Do you think the media transfer frenzy would be as crazy if the transfer window didn't exist, similar to the early 90s? Gary, no doubt about it. It would die a death. And it's media driven. That's what it is. Once Isak gets done, I reckon Whistle will get done. Brentford in a similar situation to us, trying to find a replacement before being able to sell. Yeah, it'll be like a domino effect. Surely every club has got a disciplinary process to deal with players who decide not to go and not train. There'll be a process for this. Isak will be in breach of contract. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Yasser will have told him that. as well, in no uncertain terms, or his agent. If Sesko was smart, he'd join us. Look at what we've done with Isak. Everybody bar one that's gone to Man United in the last 10 years has failed. Man United will not do well this season. If they do well, I'll be very surprised. I don't think this is an Alan Hansen moment for me on here, but I still think the manager's another big problem there. But the owners will always be the problem. There'll always be a curveball. It'll be interesting to see how they do. Really will be. We need to remember this is an anomaly of a window. Any other club would ever try to work without a CEO and a DOF. Impossible situation. I agree, mate. I agree. It is. That's probably been the biggest problem. Sesko with a centre back and 2 centre midfielders. I'll be happy with that. Miley hasn't blown me away in pre-season, and I don't think Willock is up to it. Interesting. Dean says, would you go for Paqueta? I mean, Paqueta would be good, but again, is there a space for him? Would you expect first team football? I'm not sure if he'd want to come to Newcastle. Obviously, there's other Brazilians here. Wissa feels like Ned Kelly type, worth their weight in gold. I agree. I'd love to see him in a black and white shirt. Do you not think that with the amount of injuries Willock has had, it'll affect him mentally and thus not perform the best of his ability? Yeah, it's his injuries that's affected him, unfortunately. And that's the big problem with him. I feel really, really sorry for him. Keep the faith, says Duncan. Very positive. Liverpool don't bid for Isak without Newcastle coming to the table. It does give a very good sign. That does give a very good sign. A player income has progressed. That's looking like Sesko. Bada bing, yeah, I hope you're right, mate. Sesko would be a good signing. It would make up for him leaving. Willock's terrible. He's had his purple patch seasons ago. We need to move him on. It's just his injuries, yeah, sadly. Agreed, Sesko isn't coming in unless he's been told he's going to be the main guy, which, again, then that we are going to let Isak go. Morning, Steve. Betting suspended on Sesko at NUFC late last night. Cheers, Ryan. Interesting stuff. Let's hope it's true. It's a bit of a reversal, isn't it, as well? Everyone's saying he's going to Man United, and Man United miss out when he comes to Newcastle. What message does it send to other players if we let him go cheaply? NUFC can't do that for future. Or we asking for trouble down the line? Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest deals in our recent history, which sets the precedent 100%. Johnny Ola, good morning. I've been a fan since Gowland and Burns. We are privileged at the moment. First world problems. I agree, mate. First world problems when you look at Morecambe Football Club. I feel for their fans this morning. The storm that they're going through could be the end of their club. There's always lots of people worse off. The fact that Isak hasn't put a transfer request in makes me think Liverpool maybe aren't his wish. What isn't said can also say a lot. I'd love a Scalvini in the club, real project player, someone we can make into a superstar. Yeah. Fabrizio Romano and David Ornstein have been found out this week, Steve. Yeah, I agree, mate. A lot of journalists have, haven't they? Which is funny. Steve, who was the player you most want success from for this season? I'd love to see Anthony Gordon have a good season. I'd love to see him have a chance of playing in a cup final as well. I feel really sorry for him because he got us to that cup final, not single-handedly, but he helped get us there. So I'd love to see him play well. And Lewis Hall to continue on the same road that he started on last season. He was superb last season. Do you think that we could stay away from Gay's part of any deal to the bin dippers? That would make sense to me. I don't know what's happened with that. It's gone very quiet. They are definitely sniffing around him on the Liverpool. So be interesting. Stephen, good morning. Steve, about 20 years ago, I rang a talk in on BBC Radio and said Abramovich said, and Shepard were in my restaurant. And they broadcast he was going to Tyne. I don't even have a restaurant. Stephen, that's brilliant. That is absolutely, I love that story. Have we spent anything yet? No, I haven't. Because we'll let Longstaff go. So yeah, literally, that is true, Mark. Your story is true. Yeah. So where is the money? We haven't spent anything yet. What's your thoughts on the Geordie Journos? Do you listen to those guys? I don't listen to them, mate. No, not at all. Could you imagine Cloughie putting up with Isak's antics? He would have just chinned him. Yeah, he would have done something bizarre, wouldn't he? Wissa with 19 goals and no penalties will be more than a decent replacement. Here about Superman and Gordon Lee. The difference today is FFP is playing Lee's part, which is interesting. Big thank you to everybody watching this morning. If you are watching on X, then please jump over onto YouTube, search NUFC Matters, hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Geordie Dan says, if it is proven Liverpool tapped up Isak months ago, surely there be legal action. They tried this with Southampton for Van Dijk and got into serious bother, but escaped punishment. Interesting story. And Sky Bet have got us 4-9 to Saint Cisco, Man United 11-8. Maybe there is something in the Slovenian report. We will leave it on that positive note. Back tomorrow, 5 o'clock at night. So a bit later for everybody. You can have a lie in tomorrow. And yeah, it is with the professionals, with me, Neil and Stu. Look forward to seeing you all then. Have a good day, whatever you're doing. And thanks for tuning in so goddamn early. Take care. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or tynetheatre and opera house.uk.